Good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you all to the workshop on retention of students under Section 12(1)(c) of the RT Act. This workshop is being organized by Indus Action, which is a policy implementation organization that is working for welfare rights of disadvantaged families. And it has significantly worked in the area of the right to education through research, advocacy, and engagement with stakeholders to enhance this right. We have with us today Ms. Mansi Mehta, who is the National RT lead at Indus Action. She specializes in the planning and implementation of educational projects, specifically right to education. Ms. Mansi has an academic background in planning of educational programs from the University College London, and she currently leads the government advocacy efforts across India. We sincerely thank Mansi ma'am for joining this session. With this, let's begin the session.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction. Happy to start us off. Again, I'll request if some of you can be on video. It's just easier to gauge reactions. I'm sure you would hear this from your professors as well for, whenever you're presenting, it's easier to gauge people's reactions. So if you can, please be on video. Nonetheless, I will begin now. So yeah, please, one of you can let me know if you can see my screen. Yeah, all right. Thank you. So like the introduction said, we are going to do a workshop and hopefully we do it in a workshop format. So please feel free to interrupt and ask questions. Of course, it's easier, since it's a big group, it's easier to raise hands and go one by one rather than speaking over each other. So, but I would really appreciate, interruptions and, questions whenever you think you have them, please go ahead and ask. So that way it doesn't feel like a monologue and we can have a conversation. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining on a busy afternoon, Saturday afternoon. Yes, so I'm going to be talking about the retention survey that Indus Action conducts almost now every year. It's beginning to be sort of a annual exercise for us now. Some of you may have heard about the ASA reports that were recently released, and that happens every other year. That also gauges the educational side of things. In a very similar format, we do a retention survey every year. What it is and all of that, I'm going to discuss shortly. Just to give a broad agenda, I'm going to give a brief introduction to Indus Action. I know we already had that a little bit, and you may have through the other sessions interacted with some of the other folks from Indus Action, but I'll keep it very specific to our work on right to education, Section 12(1)(c). Then we go into the retention reports. I'll talk about, say, a little bit about the last two iterations of retention survey, the purpose, the scope, the findings, and of course, at the end, we'll have a Q&A. Yeah, so to give you a broad idea about Indus Action, we work in the space of welfare rights, both with the government and the citizens. It's almost like bridging the gap between the access and the policy between government and citizens. So on the education side, we work on this very specific laws, Section 12(1)(c), which most of you, considering your background, would have heard about. This particular section reserves 25% seats in private unaided schools for EWS, which is economically weaker section, or disadvantaged groups. Right. So over the years, we've worked in multiple states in varying capacities. So a little bit about our work is that, one, we help state governments with the end-to-end design modules for admissions, which starts right from your registrations of students, of schools, to your lottery, to finally your admissions, and then reimbursements to schools. So we've supported the end-to-end design, build, operate, and transfer of RTMIS modules in Chhattisgarh, Uttarakhand, and Odisha. And currently also we're working with different states in the Northeast as well. We started working this year in Tripura, Meghalaya. We are working as well in Bihar. I know Masoom is here with us on this call. He's leading the Bihar RT operations as well. So that's kind of what our major core work is. Other than that, we design and support specific algorithms or specific modules as well. For example, the lottery module, which we are currently running in Andhra Pradesh. Along with this, there is also, once you start this process, there is, of course, a training and education process as well, which is required across blocks, districts, and state departments. So we support with that training process. And there is a per child cost, which is set by the states, which is released, basis on which the reimbursements are made to the schools. So we have also supported per child cost committees in different states. Sorry, excuse me, please. Again, along with this, we also have, say, grievance redressal mechanisms. So in some states, we do have a helpline. So parents can call on the helpline when they are making their applications. If they struggle with any of the processes, there will be a person who's trained on the other end of the phone who can actually support them to fill in that application process. We've also successfully handed over the project to the government department and NIC in 2 states, Chhattisgarh and Uttarakhand. And Indus Action has been working overall for about 11 years now. And in the past 11 years, we have supported admissions of over 7 lakh children in RT, under RT section 12(1)(c). I'll just take a brief pause here if anybody wants to question me about any of the things I mentioned. All right, I'll take that silence as no questions and go ahead. Yes, so on the publication side, these are some of the reports that we have published, which is basically checking for 2 things. One is what is happening across the country on section 12(1)(c), how are different states implementing it. As you would know, education is a concurrent subject. And while there are some central rules, there are also state rules which may differ slightly for different states. And of course, if you delve deeper, you will be able to understand more like which state is doing what. So if you are interested in understanding, say, those nuances, I would highly recommend you go through our Bright Spots reports, because they will show some trends of different states and how it differs in terms of both rules and also in terms of implementation. And some of these rules are, of course, contextual to the state context as well. So you'll be able to understand them, say, more within the context. Yeah. Now moving to retention, I do understand that this group has also done some surveys. You all have visited schools, understood some of the school infrastructure, the student-teacher ratio. Basically, you're checking for how much the school is complying with the RT norms that are set, right? So if I understand correctly, so I would say that this is again something of a similar survey. The limitation, however, for us is that we do large sample surveys because we need to be able to generalize some trends, and hence we are able to do it as a telephonic survey as of now. And in the future, we are also hoping to have it in a 2-phased manner. One, which is the telephonic survey, through which we get the large scale data and we are able to draw some analysis. And post that, we want to also go into some focus group discussions. So, if any one of you is highly motivated to work with us on that, we would love to, have you on board for, say, doing some of those focus group discussions as well with schools, with parents, children. Yeah, so leaving it there and moving to the purpose of this survey. So every year, as you would know, in different states, children take admission under section 12(1)(c) in private schools. Now, the intention or the idea behind this whole section or this policy has been that children are able to integrate in a diverse environment. They are able to, interact with more people who may come from a different class, different gender. And by class, I of course mean the socio-economic setting of a student may be different. If, for example, I'm born into a certain circumstance, everyone I'm meeting or wherever I'm going to, I end up meeting people of a very similar circumstance. So this is a kind of provision that the intention is to break away from that, to break away from the circumstances in which we are born, and be in a diverse environment, be in an environment where I'm also speaking to somebody who may not be from the same class or same caste or same gender as I am. So the purpose behind this policy is to have that kind of schooling experience where there is a diverse group of students and you're able to, spend your schooling years together, you eat together, play together. So that is the kind of intention that has been set on the umbrella under which the policy was initially framed. So this report studies after 1 year of admission. Let's say there is a batch of students or a cohort of students who's taken admission in, for example, 2023. We will survey them in 2024 after they've completed 1 year of schooling to understand how they are doing, what is their schooling experience like, is it putting any financial burden on the parents, and so on. So the study aims to assess the policy success beyond just access. Now there is one step, which is that I am able to access a school under 12(1)(c). That is, of course, the primary and the most important part, and we do work with governments on that. But we are trying to go one step ahead and say what happens after the child enters the school. So we are checking for retention, whether the child is still enrolled in the same school or they have moved to a different school. And understanding what is the reason behind it. Why, if they have changed their school, what is the reason behind changing the school? Is it not a satisfactory environment? Are they facing discrimination? And finally, the reports also touch upon parental satisfaction with the schools, how much parents are satisfied or children are satisfied with the quality of the schools. Because of the limitation I mentioned about telephonic service, we are currently able to do this with parents. So it's parents answering on behalf of children, because of course there are many ethical considerations to be taken while speaking to children. And that too over the phone becomes almost very difficult to do it, considering the ethical implications. Hence, we do this survey with parents. Any questions so far? Yes, please, Shreya, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. So basically, I want to ask, what are the issues that you face when you contact with the parents? Because usually parents are very conservative about sharing any information or anything. And we have also faced such situations when we do any survey in our committee. So what are the techniques or methods that you use to overcome these barriers?
Great question. I think this is something we struggle with every time I do it. Even though we've done like 2-3 iterations of it, we still struggle with this. Because parents are sometimes not willing to speak, sometimes not willing to share information, or sometimes they simply don't have the time to talk to you. So there are multiple, I think, things we do, but this after a certain extent, it is unavoidable. So I'll tell you what we do there as well. But first, I'll address the primary concern, which is parents willing to speak to us. So first thing first, we always seek consent. Every phone call that goes out has to be consented. That we tell them what the survey is about. Who am I? Where am I talking from? Why am I talking to you? What information am I going to collect? Why do I need this information? And how am I going to use it? So it is ensured that their names or their personal information is going to be absolutely confidential. It is only for the purpose of research. And again, we have trained enumerators who do this in their own local language. So it is not somebody, if you are in Andhra Pradesh, for example, the phone call is going to be in Telugu. And it is going to be a Telugu speaking person, culturally based in Andhra Pradesh, who will be able to understand them concerns better. Similarly, and even within, say, the Hindi speaking states, we try to have enumerators or callers who are from the state. For example, somebody from Uttarakhand will be able to call us based in Uttarakhand, will be able to understand culturally the problem or the issue that it is raising better than, say, they were in Madhya Pradesh. So we try to have map the callers accordingly. So there is cultural sensitivity built into the survey. There is consent built into the survey. There is a lot of after every step, if we do ask some questions which we already know in the survey line are going to be slightly uncomfortable, we reiterate that this is the reason why I am asking this question, and this is how it is going to be used, and this is why this is important for us to do. So if we give them that kind of understanding right at the outset, right at the beginning, I think it helps set the tone of the survey, the purpose of the survey, and also trust. Because telephonic is something that's very difficult to trust over phone call, but that is what we are trying to do by implementing these methods. Of course, there's so many resources out there that can read and learn, which we can incorporate in our survey. But at the end of it, we do find that problem of, say, the response rate being low. Generally, these response rates between 60 to 65%, which is a standard across countries. I think so. What we've done that in some cases we have oversampled. So, for example, I am looking to survey 1,000 parents, but I already know that my response rate is 60%. So I will oversample by 30 to 40% to ensure that at the end of it, I still have 1,000 surveys, even if my response rate is lower. So if I want to actually make 1,100 or 1,200 calls, I'll do it as a sample. I'll prepare a sample of 1,500 rows. So I know at least 1,100 will come through. Yeah. Great question. All right. So we spoke about the purpose of the survey, giving you a little bit of scope for, say, the two survey rounds that we did. So we surveyed Uttarakhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, these three states. Excuse me. The respondents are parents of students under RT 12(1)C who took admission in cohort 2021-22. The data that we use is there is a sample which is drawn from the state MIS data. So the state will have a overall data dump of all the children who applied and all the children who got through and got admission in that school. And so we use that data set and we draw a sample from there. So that data set could be really huge, but we still try to draw a significant sample from each of these states. So in 2023, the sample size we used was 6,900, as you can see, and the response rate was, like I said, close to 60%. So we had 4,055 parents who responded to the survey. Amongst this were 3,631 students who were admitted in school, and the rest were children who had applied but did not get admission in the school. Right, and the method I've already informed is telephonic survey, and the survey tool is the Form.io survey tool. Okay. Similarly, in 2024 report again surveys the same three states, but this time we have two cohorts. So we continue to survey the 2021 cohort that we started off with, and we survey another cohort, which is the 2022-23 cohort. So don't get confused by the year. It's just how the academic year works. I think for you as well in the university, this is how the academic year will be. Yeah, so that is our respondents. And data used is again the same. Sample size again you can see, but this year we see um, slightly higher response rate. And yeah, 67%. But for the incoming cohort, which we'll see later, it's slightly lower. But for the older cohort, the response rate is slightly higher. So this is the scope of the survey. Yes, I've mentioned very briefly the findings from our first report, and then I'll go a little bit into the detail of the second report findings. Please feel free to, interrupt and ask questions. That is what this is for. So overall, we find a very high retention rate, which is 95.5% in the overall, number of students that we survey. What you see in the sky blue color is everyone who has been retained in the same school. So they end up going to the same school. Whatever you see in the navy blue is students who dropped out, and the yellow ones are the ones who went to a different school. Right. And again, like there is some star mark dropout, because in some cases we are not able to exactly point out where this dropout has happened, or is it that for a certain time period the child was out of school and then they went back again. So that is why in this round of the survey there was a little bit of a question mark there, which we have eventually resolved in the next iterations of our survey. Yeah, another important finding is how did they get aware about RT121C in the first place. So most of them, as you can see, is through a friend or a relative. So mostly it spreads through word of mouth. If somebody in your community or neighborhood has gone to school under this provision, it's more likely that you will also go. The second is school notice board, word of mouth in the community. If your ASHA worker or your Anganwadi worker has spread awareness about it. And then, of course, there are some other methods, and some of them are even through, say, a social worker or NGO. How did parents fill in the RT application? So most of them, as you can see, the sky blue color again here represents through a cyber cafe. So most of them have filled the application through a cyber cafe or a common CSC center, which is your common service centers. The next 5% that you see in the red are that they have filled the application on their own. So on their own could be that some person in the family has supported the parent, or the parent themselves have filled the application. But in most cases, like you will see that mostly parents require support and they visit a cyber cafe. Most of these households don't own a computer. And the applications, of course, are better to do on a computer. It's very difficult to do it on the phone. So that could also be the reason why most parents would go to cyber cafe. Include the repeater rate. Can you please clarify, Danish, what is your question?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, good afternoon.
My question regarding the retention rate is that does it include the repeater rate? Means if some student doesn't pass the class that is studying.
Yeah, I'm sure. Thanks for the question, Danish. So you would have heard about the no detention policy as well within RTE, in which you cannot, as per law, have a student in the same class for consecutive years. So you have to and this is applicable till the child reaches class 8th. They have to keep progressing. If it is something where but I do know what you're asking is a very practical question, and I do appreciate it, because many a time what happens if the child is not in the age appropriate class, although now that has also been covered under the NEP. Now, NEP says only if a child is 6+ years of age, only then they go to class 1, else they will go to a lower class. Right. So repeater in general you will not see because it is because of the no detention policy. But sometimes it does happen that parents do speak to schools and they want their child to be retained because the child cannot cover up academically. In that case, the school would generally present a letter to the block education officer, and that would be on a case to case basis. So very hard to say what will have happened there, but generally we don't see detention in the same class from in elementary education, which is 1 to 8. Yes, Kashish.
Hi, ma'am. Ma'am, as we can see through the percentages on the board, the level of awareness or how these admissions are happening, the numbers of the awareness or NGOs is very less. So, as part of the committee where we are trying to put forward this agenda, why do you think that is, or what more could such organizations do to increase their reach?
Yeah, no, great question, Kashish. I think I'm not sure why that is. I speculate that myself as well, but I'm not sure why that is. It also depends on which. So basically, it also depends on which sample we are drawing. For example, if I'm drawing a sample from, if I were to draw a sample from Delhi, for example, and say, how did you get to know about this policy? Most of it, not most of it, of course, not most of it, but a significant proportion of it would be through NGO social workers. Why? Because Delhi has that many NGOs or social workers. Whereas if I'm talking about Uttarakhand, Chhattisgarh, which are more tribal, more rural states, hilly regions, where you may not have the kind of resources that our cities or our metropolitan cities have, then of course that ratio goes down. And it would only, like I said, if somebody in your community, in your neighborhood has gotten admission, it is much more likely that you will even be aware and you will go ahead and apply. Whereas if nobody in my community or neighborhood has ever applied, it is less likely that I will apply as well, because maybe I don't know that this policy exists. So, and what we can do is, I think, very specific campaigns which are targeted for the weaker, as in we need to also understand, one is the eligible group, but one is who is the most vulnerable within the eligible groups. So we need to have very targeted awareness campaigns. So you have to either go down to those areas or find grassroots organizations who are working in such areas. So there are some organizations who are specifically working with tribal communities, who are specifically working with SC/ST populations. So those are the kind of organizations that we can work with to ensure that word reaches the ground. Yeah, and of course, this group, together you can all pick each other's brains and come up with so many more ways of doing this. So I'm sharing basis on what I know, but of course, you can think about many more ways of doing this. Yeah, in the interest of time, I will move ahead and try to cover the next section a bit quickly, because I do want to keep some time for Q&A at the end. All right, so moving to very similar trends, what you saw in the 2023 report, we repeat the same process again in 2024, and this time we surveyed two cohorts, like you can see. The 2021 cohort, because now they have been for 2 years in school, we see slightly higher, slightly lower retention. So 86.5%, which is still quite strong, but less as compared to the 23 cohort who have only been in school for 1 year. When we bifurcate this by gender, we see that there is a marginal difference in the younger cohort, which is the 22 cohort. We see marginal difference between girls and boys. But whereas if we if we check the older cohort, which is your 21 cohort, we see girls are showing higher retention than boys. Now, whatever the reasons for this may be, we'll have to go into a little bit more depth and understand. But this is what our survey tells us. As you can imagine, scheduled tribe category shows lowest retention, which is 86% in the younger cohort and 76% in the older cohort. So we are seeing that scheduled tribe students are finding it difficult to continue in the same schools as compared to other category of students. 22% of the parents report paying school related fee. So ideally, the policy is supposed to be like parents don't pay for education. It is funded for by the governments, by the state and central governments combined. But in some cases, parents are required to say pay some or the other kind of fees. I'm so sorry, just a sec. Yeah. No. Yeah. So coming back, yeah, so parents are required to pay some kind of ancillary fee. It may or may not be tuition fees. It may be something else. It may be for an excursion. It may be for safety in school, something like that. So that may be required for them to pay. And we ask a follow-up question that, are you comfortable in paying this fees? So 46% of the parents report that they are not comfortable in paying this fees. So because it puts a financial burden on them. But the good news that, we can tell on the basis of our survey, and which also sort of negates what we hear from anecdotal evidence. We hear maybe sometimes in newspaper reports that, okay, there is discrimination happening in schools. So over 90% of the parents do not explicitly report any social discrimination. So most of the parents have not reported that their child is being discriminated against. These are some graphs. I think they are self-explanatory, so I will not go into reading them out. So you can see the screen and make your judgment. I think this is clear, and we covered this previously. This is what I shared for girls and boys. So we see more retention in the case of girls. So here we see marginal difference, that there is almost no difference between the way girls and boys are being retained in school in the younger cohort. But when we check for retention in the older cohort, we do see girls are slightly higher than the boys. Yes, if we look at a state-wise bifurcation, which because we did the survey in 3 states, we find that in Uttarakhand and Orissa, the retention is higher as compared to Chhattisgarh. So Chhattisgarh, we see more dropouts. So all the yellows you are seeing here are the yellows you are seeing are children who have switched to a different school. They're not starting in the same school anymore. But the reds, which fortunately are very less, are the children who have dropped out. So like I said in the previous round of the survey, the dropout wasn't as clear to us, but in this survey we have much clearer picture on the dropouts, that how many have dropped out of the schooling system completely. And as you can see, it is very few percentages. So that is good news for all of us, that even if the child is not continuing in the same school, they have changed the school, they have moved to another school. And mostly we find that because of reasons which are more personal rather than social. Yes, like I mentioned previously, that ST students are most likely to drop out, and or to say move to another school because they might not be adjusting well to the school environment, which is also clear from here. So in both the cohorts, if we pay attention to the ST students, we see it is less than the other categories of students. So 78% retention in the older cohort and 86% in the younger cohort, whereas all the other categories are in 90s. CWSN are children with special needs, but I'm disregarding this for now, this statistic for now, because we have very few the children with special needs in the survey. So it is not a statistically significant result, I would say. So we cannot talk, we cannot draw inferences from this because the number for CWSN is very, very small. And that is one of the other things that, like Kashishu asked that question, like what can we do? We do see that children with special needs, the applications are very low. And even if the parents apply and they do get admission, the schools often discourage the parents because they do tell the parents that, okay, the child might not fit here well because either they have some physical disability or they have, say, hearing or visual disability. So they're often discouraged by the school. This, of course, we can say from anecdotal evidence. Yes, so that is something again that we can focus on when we are thinking about who is the most vulnerable group. Yes, Kritika.
Greetings, ma'am. So, ma'am, as you pointed out that the students from STs are most vulnerable to dropouts, what can be the measures that we can adopt to retain them more? Are there any that are in your minds as of now? What can we do or the government can do to increase the retention for them?
Right. I think the first step would be to identify the reason for the dropout. Is there dropout because of discrimination, or is there dropout because of some other reason? If it is, say, discrimination, then some kind of sensitization can be done with the teachers, the students, the principals. Because a lot of times it is unfortunate, but sometimes what we do see that teachers are also practicing discrimination against certain children who are coming from specific castes. So not to put it in a broad bracket and say this is why, because it can be a very case-to-case basis, and it can be much more complex than we currently have data for to understand. But of course, some kind of sensitization within schools, some kind of extra support. Like, for example, some schools have adopted a buddy system. As soon as I enter school, if I'm coming from a disadvantaged background, I have a buddy in my school who can support me, who can be a senior, who can be my classmate, who can be anyone in the school who will help me settle into the school environment. Teachers have to pay some extra attention, some extra care, love, sensitization, are some of the measures that we can do. So it has to come from everything, like from the other parents who, say, parents of other children who may be discriminating against this child. So it has to be parent sensitization, teacher, principal sensitization. So basically just that environment of, acceptance and support needs to be there for that child. So a lot of schools have done really good work on this. And Indus Action also, if you go to Indus Action publication pages on the website, you will be able to find that report. Some of these schools are in Delhi, and Vasant Valley School, for example, modern school, they do a lot of initiatives to actually ensure that students are well adjusted within that environment. Of course, we can't put this out of context. Every school doesn't have the resources to do all of this, to hold extra classes, but a general sensitization is something that can help child adapt to a different environment. Yes, so one of the things that we wanted to share is in both of the cohorts, the older cohort, the 21 cohort and the 23 cohort, we see why students change schools. Mostly is because of the distance. The school in which they took admission is very far from them. So that is that is why I was saying that, sometimes the reasons for switching schools are more personal rather than being dependent on the school or being, say, coming from an external place. So mostly because parents are finding it difficult to send a child to school every day because of the long commute, the expense the travel will require, all of that. And in some cases, you can also see relocation is the problem. So if the parent was living in the city for work and suddenly they've moved back to their village, then of course they will have to withdraw their child from school as well. Yes, so this is the good, coming to the good part and trying to close on a high, is that parents do not report explicitly, cases of discrimination. So as you can see here that in the graphs that we ask these questions, child enjoys being in school, and most all the yellows and the blues that you see are either they are agree and strongly agree. So yellow part is agree and the blue part is strongly agree. So most of them agree that child is enjoying, child is having a good time in school, child enjoys being in school. Second question is teacher pays attention to the child performance. So again, as you can see, in majority of the cases, parents either agree or strongly agree that teacher is paying attention to the child performance. And whether the child has an overall positive experience in school with teachers, with peers, with academics. So again, we see strong, big, huge number, 98.5% parents strongly agree that the child has a positive overall experience in school. Coming to the financial burden part, which we spoke about earlier as well. So 22% parents reported paying school fees. So, okay, I'm sorry. I think I've switched up something. Okay, yeah, these are more questions on, say, the parental satisfaction. Say, teacher, does the teacher inquire if the child is absent? So 94% teachers inquire whether the child is absent. Is your child friends with other children from who might be from more well-to-do families? So 95% of the parents report that yes, child is, has friends in, say, people who are not coming from the same circumstance as me. Thirdly, we ask, are you required to pay any school fees? So in this case, 22% parents have reported that they are paying school fees. If parent says yes, then we ask a follow-up question, which you can see, the comfort level in paying school-related fees. So as you can see, 46% of them are strongly uncomfortable or uncomfortable. And then at least 30% of the parents, they have to pay some or the other kind of ancillary fee over and above what gets reimbursed from the government, but they are 30% at least are comfortable in paying that one. Yeah. So this is the frequency. This is the teacher parent engagement. So how many times parents are engaging with the teacher? So we do see most of them are engaging at least once a month, if not every day, which seems to be a good percentage, because at least we have this group who is interacting at least once a month. So some of them will interact every day, some of them every week, but at least once a month interaction is there. Very few parents have never interacted with the teacher or have interacted only one time. So this is again good news in that sense, that there is some kind of parent-teacher engagement as well. Yes, lastly, I'll talk a little bit about the limitations and what we do in the next round to say, prevent these limitations and to pave our way forward. So first is self-selection bias. Like I said, there is a consent at the very beginning of the survey. So it is a self-selection bias. Who will consent to talk? Somebody who has the time, somebody who can understand the language I'm speaking. Even though we do it in a very culturally sensitive way, still the parent who is willing to speak to somebody in a position of authority or power, that is a self-selection bias. That parents are self-selecting themselves to be in the survey. They are not forced to be in the survey, of course. There is a consent process. And many of the numbers that we dial, the phone numbers that we dial, will be switched off. Repeatedly, we'll call them and it will be switched off. So, of course, then automatically that parent does not get surveyed. So only a phone that is working, that is operational, that is charged, that is switched on, that has some incoming balance in it, only then we'll be able to call the parent and do the survey. So automatically it becomes a self-selecting bias. Excuse me, the lack of representation of lowest populations due to limited access of phones. This is exactly what I was talking about. Like whether first of all you need to have a phone connection, you have to have some balance on your phone for incoming calls to come. It has to be charged and not switched off so that we can place the call and we can talk to you. So there automatically becomes lack of representation of the lowest income or the lowest socioeconomic group in this case. Secondly, trust building. While we do the survey and we ask all the questions, but the trust building on the phone is difficult, and we do say some things or set the tone of the call at the very outset, but still trust building is difficult over the phone. So we cannot be 100% certain that we are getting authentic answers, especially to difficult questions. Now, let's say I'll take an example to share this as well. So, for example, if we ask the child is having a good time in school, maybe not, but the parent is answering yes, because they are scared that if I give a bad feedback, my child may have to leave the school and go elsewhere. So they are scared that, I should not give a bad feedback. So maybe they are not being 100% authentic. And there is limited scope for us to be able to check for the authenticity other than just try to build that trust with them that, this is going to be anonymous. This is going to be confidential. It's not going to be used for any other purpose other than research. So, yes. So we did face this problem in our last iteration of the survey, but we are taking a lot of measures to not have it now. Say editing any question after the survey goes live. So if I edit any question, and this is important maybe for you to do, since you all are law background students, you may be doing surveys of different kinds. So, once you have set the question, make sure you test out the form, you test out the survey, make any changes, because if you do it afterwards, after you have made it live, then there is consistency problem. Like your responses are not going to be consistent. Right. So to ensure that that consistency is there, of course, data cleaning is a technical thing that still can be done, but why to keep it, if we can prevent it from happening, data cleaning can still be done. But consistency in the responses is something we want to ensure. Quality check mechanisms were not optimum. This is for our last year survey. So this year, when we are doing our current iteration of the survey, we are ensuring that quality check mechanisms are there as well. So if an enumerator is placing the call, there is a manager who will access some of the call recordings and, be able to check that, whether they are asking the question in the right manner, whether they are recording responses correctly. They might also do some back checks that, I will call that person again and do that survey again to ensure that the responses that are filled in the first place are the correct responses. They do not mismatch with, say, what the enumerator has done and what I might be hearing from the parent. So that kind of quality check mechanism is also required. Yes, lastly, talking about the way forward. So we are, as we said, studying one of these cohorts in longitudinal manner. Longitudinal meaning that we do survey them every year. So we surveyed them 1 year after admission, 2 years after admission, 3 years after admission. So now till they go up to class 5, and the transition from primary to upper primary school happens when they move transition from 5th to 6th, because that is also the point in a child's life when we see dropouts. After 5th and after 8th, maximum dropouts happen there. In class 9th, when the child will fail in class, of course, the dropouts will happen. So we try to see them through, and we will do that sample or do that survey all through till the child covers primary education. So that is one thing that we are currently doing. And yes, the second thing that I also spoke about earlier is more qualitative insight. While we are able to collect a lot of data, analyze that data, we need some say foot on the ground. We need to be in the fields. We need to be talking to children, talking to schools, talking to parents to understand a little bit more deeper insights. Some of the questions that you asked in this group were very, very important, that, why is this, or how can we change this? So I think those are some of the things that if we take them to the ground and ask them to the right group and focus group discussions with parents, students, teachers, we'll be able to get a lot more qualitative insights. Yes, of course. Now I pause for questions if anyone has any. Yes, Pranav.
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, my question is regarding sample bias. I think you partly mentioned that, since a lot of parents aren't able to pick the calls, is the most efficient way of knowing the state of RT 121C surveying the parents, or regarding the state of what the students are going through? Wouldn't it be better to survey the students? Because something like, is the child really getting the proper education? Is the standard of education meeting the levels? Is the cleanliness of the washrooms really up to the mark? So eliminating that, is there like a proper healthy manner in which we can approach surveying these students?
Yeah, Pranav, great question. So we have struggled with this, like I mentioned, and when you read the report, you will also know that, this is something we mention as a limitation in our survey, that child voice is missing. What we are recording is, of course, parents' interpretation of child experience, or parents' perspective, even. If we were to put it that way. But there are some concerns, some ethical concerns with, doing surveys with children who are really young. If we were talking about, say, teenagers who have, who may be in a position to basically answer some of the questions, it will be slightly different. If you are interviewing very young children, so these are children in the age group of 6 to 8. All of them are less than age 10. So we do seek parent responses on the child behalf, of course, and trust building is not something which comes easily with children, especially over the phone when you can't see the person. So that is something like which will be covered, say, in the second step that I mentioned, which is doing qualitative surveys and focus group discussions. When you have children in a safe space, in a safe environment, where you can talk to them, they are in the presence of a, say, an adult that they trust already, then we are able to, say, talk to students, which we will be trying to do in our next iteration, which is the 2025 surveys in ongoing and in process right now. So post the data collection, we will try to do some focus group discussions with children. And of course, we have to seek parent consent. We have to seek, we have to ensure some ethical considerations. So once we are able to do it, and it is not something that one organization like Indus Action alone will be able to do. We need the support of, say, child protection bodies as to what are the ways in which we can do this with children. We need the support of, say, some other child rights organization who can help us in understanding the ethical and the practical concerns of interviewing children. So I would say that is a limitation, but children under the age of 10, 12, or even 14 for that matter, it's very difficult to get it correct, I would say. So we want to be sure that we are doing it right when we do it. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions from anyone? You can see something on the chat. How to coordinate with private school owners when they are not willing to admit students or creating some barriers. Alternatively, in the remotest areas of the state, many schools do not register for admission portal. Very, very valid concerns, Anand. If you want to give voice to your question, or I can take it on the fly. Yes, very valid concern. So some of the things are that you get in touch with your block education officer. Every district has multiple blocks, and every block will have a education officer. So first things first, you can write if you are a concerned citizen, a parent who wants to apply to these schools, but the schools are creating a barrier. There is most states have a helpline or an email or a phone call which you can make. You can alternatively meet or write a letter, email to the block education officer, who should be able to get this through. And of course, if I would also recommend speaking to somebody with an intersection. Like, there are members in our team who we have been able to sort of resolve some of the issues, especially if we are working in that states. For example, if Masoom is still on the call, Masoom, maybe you can give an example here. Yeah, I see that Masoom is here. Okay. Okay. Anyway, I'll move forward. I'm not sure if Masoom is here and listening or can hear us. The second part of your question, remotest area schools do not register on the admission portal. Yeah, so again, it is something that we try to build through the chain of district education officers and block education officers, because they are the direct point of contact for the schools. So school will not say comply if you and I are going to call them tomorrow and say, listen, you are not on the portal, you need to be here. But when a block education officer gives them the same messaging, or it has very practical implications, because there have been cases in which school licenses have been revoked, or schools certificate of recognition have been revoked, because they are not following due process when it comes to RT121C registrations. So this has happened in Chandigarh. There are, of course, newspaper reports that you can refer to. And block education officer is anyway the authority who has a block or district education officer will be the authority who has given them that certificate of recognition. And that certificate of recognition is time bound. So it is for 5 years. And after 5 years, they have to get a renewal process. So if they are not following due process, they have to come under scrutiny, and there is chances that their certificate will not be revived, or their certificate will not be renewed by the said officer. So I think there are some of the ways to get in touch with say state authorities, block or district authorities, as well as you can get in touch with, if Indus Action is working with the state in that particular state, then of course you can get in touch with a member of our team, and we'll see what we can do at our end. Any other questions? Yes, Shreya, please.
Oh, so ma'am, you were talking about the retention rate. So ma'am, is there any legal mechanism, or is there any like suggestion that or a policy recommendation that we can have for the RTE Act or any other legal requirement to make the retention rate much better?
Yeah, so I think retention is already quite good. So I will not question it in that sense. See, normally also if you check for retention, and we are calling retention if the child continues in the same school. In many cases, the child is also switching schools due to personal reasons, which could be the same as, they are for you and me as well. So even if you are, say, born with a certain amount of privilege, there may be reasons why you switch schools. Your parents move to a different area, a different city, or all the people in your colony, your neighborhood were going to a certain school. So I think those, 5, 6, 8 to 10% will always be cases like that. But if we do see, say, indication that this is really a red flag, that children are really dropping out, then of course we need to do something about it. But nonetheless, there is so many things that can be done within the school, within the community. For example, what we spoke about earlier as well, to create a good supportive environment for the child. So sensitization, ensuring they have a buddy system or some mechanism. in the school which can support the child to be in school. And I would say not just for children who are under, say, RT 121C, but overall for all children. For example, especially for children who come from CWSN backgrounds, there is a lot of talk about, integrating them in mainstream schools. But do mainstream schools um, have the training, the proper training, the proper knowledge to be able to support and provide a good environment for these children? Infrastructure is of course one thing, like wheelchair access, all of that you will not find in many of the schools. But there is also other things, that are the teachers sensitive? Is there a special educator in the school? If not, are the general teachers, subject teachers, for example, are they trained to, in some kind of special education technique, something like that, so that mainstreaming can happen and all children can have a good experience of schooling.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, I do have a hard stop now. So thank you, everyone. It's been really nice interacting with all of you. I'm putting up the QR code for our report. And of course, if you go to our website, you should be able to find this easily. So yes. We will also have a 2025 survey report, which we will release sometime, in August or September. So maybe, yes, that will also go up on the Intersection website. So you can always refer it there. But thanks. It was a lovely chat. Thank you for interacting and engaging. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We really thank you for taking out so much time out of your busy schedule and for this insightful session. We also thank all the panelists for attending this session and the participants for your active participation. We hope that this workshop has provided a meaningful perspective on strengthening student retention under Section 121C of the RTE Act. With this, we would like to conclude day one of this paper presentation series. Thank you so much for all for joining.